I'm Coach Oyama, and I have a passion to help you improve. I specialize through improvement through macro, helping you understand macro concepts and the broader image in Overwatch. And all my coaching is free. All you got to do is DM me. Here's my contact, the teams that I've worked with before. If you're interested, let's get right into this. So we have a GM3 on Paradise. Okay, whatever. But specifically, we're looking. They wanted to take a look at the positioning, and so what that tells me is perhaps that they wanted a bigger understanding of what's going on from the top down. And so whenever I hear positioning, I always think of or whenever I start to consider positioning, the first thing I start to think of is how are they playing with their teammates, and what are they doing with their teammates, and how's their like overall decision making and their philosophy while they're playing coordinated with their team. So, you know, positioning is very relative with your team, because if your team is doing a certain strategy, positioning shouldn't really matter as much as or positioning will be adjusted with your team. Oh my. So this is a very interesting start to the game where your monkey makes a rotation out. Yeah, and there's a Junker Queen behind. Okay. Yeah, what I'm seeing right now is this is a weird way to gain space and your team is a bit split. So nothing really much that you can do here. What I do notice though is in your micro, I feel like you're a bit panicky, and I can read from like the body language of how you're moving and how you're aiming. Maybe this is just your playstyle, we'll see as the game goes on, but it seems like you're very jittery, and you do seem to hit a lot of shots, but you know, in these situations where like time is tight like this, or like it's better if you're calm and relaxed and you hit more shots rather than hitting like shooting more and hopefully getting out more pumps of volume. You know, sometimes a critical one shot is the really important thing to be able to get more volume. If we like scroll back to here when we were trying to protect our Cassidy, yeah, a life or death is all the difference, and so if you slow down here and hit this Bionin, your Cassidy would have definitely lived. And so that's funny that your monkey blocked him, but just the small things that we can control, and not the fact that the monkey just was being a monkey and monkeyed your Cassidy. But needless to say, take a second to slow down and breathe, and once you master your mechanics and it's like second hand, you can just scope shot and hit it, and you don't have to think about it as much. Then you won't have to breathe, and it'll just feel like breathing. It'll just be as natural as breathing. Okay. I like your ability usage here. Let me see how you use that answer one more time. Your positioning here on the high ground is pretty good. I would recommend that you hug the left corner a little bit more, because there's no downside in doing so. And then you can also just sit here scoped, and every once in a while look up top for any threats. Sorry, I was too busy ranting rather than looking at this anti here. Okay. Let's zoom out from this fight and take a look from the third person to see what's going on here. What I would try to do is every single team fight here, if you anti the Junker Queen, they're not going to be able to take space effectively, because that queen has to cower or use all of her abilities to trade for your anti and be able to take that space still, or she or her team pumps a lot of abilities into her. So it's really a trade if you guys use like $10 and they invest like $200 just to get their Junker Queen to operate like a regular person. So if you're able to anti the Junker Queen in a chokehold before she takes space, or while she's taking space is even better, then they're going to have to spend a lot to save her. So you can't save her Cassidy here, sometimes it just happens like that. But what you can do is deny value from their Junker Queen and then help your monkey, because he's able to cleave them at the chokehold if they aren't able to push through. From the top-down perspective, looking at the ult, so you know that the Junker Queen has ult, you know that Bob has come out. I really liked how you slept the Bob there. That's a really good use of Sleep Dart. If you knew that Bob was coming out and you're saving Sleep Dart for the Bob, really good on you. That was really, really good. Otherwise, yeah, the anti-nade, the only thing I would say is look for the anti-nade on the queen, especially since you also have a Mercy who's able to pocket, and you don't necessarily need to focus as much of your attention on your DPS or on your second healer, because they're so independent as compared to something like a Zenyatta, or as compared to maybe well, most of the other supports are pretty self-sustaining too, but the fact of the matter is Mercy is very good at healing your DPS, and if your DPS, I would rather have you focused on providing value through your kit rather than doing what your Mercy is also doing, or else you kind of go into her territory of how she provides value. Let's look at this fight here. You're on the high ground here. Okay. Yet again, I think so. One of the ideas here is having the bigger image in your head to be able to know where your focus is, because I feel like maybe we don't properly assess the opportunities that are given to us here. Yeah, okay, very nice nade on the Junker Queen. You could have naded either the Ashe or the Junker Queen here, because they're within your LOS and within the team's like follow-up distance, if that makes sense. You could have naded the Baptiste over there, but your monkey already had the Baptiste. So now it's a question of how do you use your abilities to better provide value to your team. And I don't know how to exactly explain this right now, but it just smells so much like you should be anting whoever's on point here immediately instead of waiting and using your anti-nade. And of course you can, I'm trying to like measure out how I feel that your abilities should be used in this team fight, and I think it's just the fact that you guys are up on numbers and you still have a Mercy, so you don't necessarily need to be the most like cautiously self-sustaining playing for yourself, and so you can use your abilities. And you know that there's no major fight-winning ultimates or win conditions still on the battlefield, so it's more of a mid-fight cleanup phase where you just need to kill the enemies and do whatever it takes in order to get into that next fight. And it's like one small thing. Yeah, also small tip, the cart will push out by itself all the way up till like there, so I think. I might be wrong. But you can push forward and help still support your team. Okay. See, I feel like you're playing very scary here. This positioning is fine, but I'd love to see a more aggressive positioning, especially because right now you can adopt a very aggressive playstyle where you don't need to heal your team as much because you have a Mercy. And okay, so the Mercy buff healing under 50% health, maybe you're just used to Mercy not healing as strongly, but Mercy will be able to heal your tank an insane amount, and also your ball is very self-sustaining as well as your Tracer, because there are a lot of health packs on this map. And or not really, but they're the entire map is very crunched down, so then they can navigate to those health packs more effectively than on a different map, let's say like Blizzard World, where it's huge. The health packs are super spread apart. But here I would love to see you flanking, taking high grounds, and taking way more risks, because if you trade your anti-nade and anti any of the squishies or the important ones for or let's think about your threats first of all, because you know, it'd be careless to flank into a threat. But so they have a pocketed Ashe Mercy. There's probably never gonna Mercy's probably never gonna be on the Tracer. So the Tracer's an independent threat. Ashe Mercy's an independent threat. Junker Queen is her own threat, but that's the easiest to take care of because you see her in main most of the time and you're like keeping track of where she is mostly. Baptiste is also somewhat of a threat, but that's more of an even battle. So if you can force cooldowns from that Baptiste or the Junker Queen and avoid the Tracer, that's the best case scenario. And I think with your mechanics of what I saw, I think that you can threaten a Tracer, and it's not about the fact that you're going to kill that Tracer every single time or that you're going to hit that sleep dart every single time, but if you flank up here and that Tracer is distracted, you have so much more value above that Tracer. Like, even if she gets a pulse bomb, if you come up here and you anti the pocketed Ashe or anti the Baptiste or anti that Junker Queen, it creates so much pressure on the map that your team will be able to take so much space and so many angles that it's going to overwhelm them. And effectively, if their Junker Queen has to back up to this corner and their Ashe Mercy is out here, that Ash Mercy is taking a 2v5 now, and they have to back up, or else they're gonna. It's gonna be very consequential for them, and they're gonna have to use a lot of resources to sustain this position, and then it throws them off because their Junker Queen is back when they start backing up, and then their Junker Queen has to back up, and they have to use even more resources for the Junker Queen. Or what the correct decision is, they all back up here. So rather than sitting on cart and trying to like heal bot, especially if you can, if you're in voice comms, ask your tracer, especially when you're in this situation when you have this potential to flank up into the high ground and take the space, your tracer can stay on card, and if anyone matches him, this is a really good opportunity, especially the Junker Queen. You can anti them, and then they're in a really bad position if they're trying to contest the tracer on cart, because they're all out in the open. And so you can't control your tracer, but it'd be good if you can ask her to sit on cart here, so then you can make some plays and get even more value rather than just AFKing. And needless to say, going into this next fight again, if you're ult tracking, one thing that I heavily recommend, but it looks like you have a good habit of saving your cooldowns and understanding how to play against the enemy's composition. Saving your sleep for Bob is one of those things that that I notice that you do very often. Okay. Anting the Junker Queen, very nice. Okay. But I would say also your positioning here, you're not using your kit to its full potential because you're not willing to take risks. What I want you to do, okay, so this is going to be one of the 3 things that I'm going to point out for you to do in your future games. I want you to limit test. I want you to int. I want you to literally int. It's going to sound terrible, and it is terrible. But this is how you get better, and you limit test. And now the way to not be a feeder while inting is don't make the same mistake twice, and that's easier than said. But I want you to, next time you're playing on Paradiso against this like team-ish where they have a brawl, they have a spammy DPS that and a threat of a flanker like a Reaper, a Genji, or a Tracer, take this left flank and just run it down and try to get, or play sneaky deaky like, and try save your sleep for the flanker, or properly assess the threats and use one of your cooldowns to hold yourself against the threat. Make sure that you're ready to fall back to your team and get somewhat within your support line of sight. But take this aggressive angle, come up here and use your kit, because the way you're using your kit right now it's perfect, but the positioning doesn't allow your kit to really shine as it can. And so if you take this threat, maybe you'll get to the point where eventually the Tracers, the Reapers, the Genjis, the flankers will like be able to dodge your sleep and be able to juke you so hard that you can't take this flank anymore. But if it works 51% of the time, that's more than half, and that's like you're on the right path to growing as a better player if it's working a little bit better. But nevertheless, if you get, let's say, like 10 utility points out of using your anti and your sleep down here, and you have like a 40% chance of hitting this Tracer because you use your anti to stay alive, your Bionate to stay alive, you use your sleep to try to get a pick on that Tracer, you can use the same exact things up here, except the thing is you have that like 1 out of 10 chance where you get into the enemy backline and you anti-nade them, and you're the reason why your team pushes through and wins that team fight because of that small, like, that. Here's a good example. That small decision making compounding into a like snowball effect of the enemy team has to back up here, or you sleep the Junker Queen and they have to use resources. And so this is a good example of limit testing, when you miss your abilities and now you know, okay, either I need to hit my abilities when I go for that again, because it was possible for me to go up to that high ground and get like a lot of value by sleeping the Junker Queen or anting their backline. The timing on that Bionate was a little bit sussy though, because they were all backing up in the first place. So if you anti-nade them, or it's like a go with the flow. If they're backing up in the first place and you anti-nade them, they're just going to keep on backing up, so your anti-nade doesn't have as much value as if they're going towards you and you anti-nade them and it forces them to go backwards. Needless to say, let's see you take a bit more risk. So on this side, on defense, a risk would be playing up here and playing on this ledge first. And of course you have to acknowledge the fact that they have a pocketed Ashe. She doesn't one-shot you anymore, especially from range. But if they have a Widowmaker, a Hanzo, or anyone who can one-shot you really, the Tracer kind of counts as a flanker, but more so on this long line of sight, then that's a difference that you have to take care of. But especially since they're not playing Curie, and they're on Junker Queen, again, anting that Junker Queen in a fight has so much more value than just healing your team here. So even though it feels like you're doing the right thing, perhaps consider switching your playstyle. And it's not about healing your team. Remember, we're playing support, and all support is doing is enabling your team. If you can enable your team by taking space and denying the enemy value, and instead of it's like making their lives easier rather than doing their job for them. Okay, let's go into this next fight here. Yeah, because a lot of the times, especially when you're not taking risks and you're not using your kit to go aggressive into the enemies, and you're more focused on trying to enable your teammates through healing and supporting them, and only using your kit defensively to prevent against those threats. Not to say that that's bad, because you of course have to like manage your threats and manage your cooldowns to be able to not die to those threats, but you'll be stuck in situations where you have nothing that you can do and you're kind of just watching your team die. Yeah, like this is a good example. I mean, that you can't save him there, but you can possibly get an anti or a sleep in somewhere else if you're up in the second high ground and you anti their Junker Queen, and then maybe your Cassidy doesn't die because they're all distracted because you're up in that high ground applying pressure to the enemy team. Yeah, again, flanking right here, trying to get an anti-nade. If you sleep their Mercy, if you get an anti on anyone, you're really safe. You're really safe, so you don't have to address really very many threats, and you have so much better of a sightline for your offensive cooldowns. Okay, I like that anti-nade. Yeah, very nice. The only thing that I would say is remember, position more aggressive, take a bit more risks, and look to do that even sooner, because now the effect of that anti-nade has been diluted because there are less people in this fight on your team, and so it's more of like you guys are trying to recover rather than push into the enemies, and so it doesn't affect them as much as if you were in an even situation. Okay, so like right here is a perfect place to anti-nade. Oh, okay. You have to hit that one. That sometimes the anti-nades don't really matter, like but when we were looking at like your Cassidy being alive, if you hit the anti-nade, this would be a fight win if you hit an anti-nade, because it would completely put the enemy team offline, or if they continued to be online, they would be dead. So perhaps work on the micro, because yeah, I think one tip that I'll give you for the micro is I think slow down. Honestly, slow down, because I feel like you're trying to get a lot of shots out, and even though you'll probably see a decrease in rank if you try to do this, but it's for the better, because you'll have a better understanding of what's going on. A different, or some ways to do this is go into a warm-up trainer, an aim trainer, and just practice your aim so it becomes so familiar to you that there's nothing new that happens when you get into the game and you're already calm and you're just chilling. Maybe listen to calm music if you like listening to music. If you're listening to like EDM, drum and bass, like heavy metal or like trap right now, and you're like just super jittery because of it, it's going to affect your decision making, because you're not seeing as much. You're not mentally conscious of as much in the team fight. Okay, so addressing the threats for that risky playstyle now, they do have a D.Va, so that's really, really hard to if the D.Va is a decent player, it's really, really hard to get more value as an aggressive Ana player. But then again, you can totally disable the D.Va just from your passive pressure of staying alive, because that D.Va has to look at you and has to use her mental capital to be able to look at you instead of one of your DPS players. If your DPS players are flanking while you're applying pressure to that D.Va with your positioning, then it's very hard for her to really operate as compared to if you weren't applying pressure. Nice anti-nade, I like that. Securing the kill on the Ashe. One thing to consider. Okay, let's right here talk about priorities of where your attention is going. You know that the Ashe is already dead, and if your Cassidy loses that, I would rather have you looking at the Mercy here, because if your Cassidy loses that 1v1 to the Ashe, he just doesn't deserve his rank. And so it's like, think yin and yang things will balance out. He deserves it'll deserve, and but the thing is, the more important fight is happening in front of you in the team fight. Also, from just a micro point of view, nanoing your monkey I feel is nearly always the best option, especially if they don't have an Ana or someone who can deny the monkey, or a Reaper or a Zenyatta who can who has Transcendence and can discord the monkey to shred him. Monkey gets a lot of value from brawling in with his Tesla cannon and cleaving the enemy backline. It's like equivalent to like an entire DPS that they can't stop, who's just running them over in the backline. I see what you mean by the second point positioning on the high ground, how you're kind of just sitting down here and it feels like downtime. Nice shots onto the enemies here. That was a very nice offensive nade. Now you have D.Va's attention. See, this is a really good example of playing the optimal goal of playing Ana offensively, because your ball would have died, or at least would be offline, even more offline right now if you hadn't anti that cast, because now he's looking at you, the D.Va's looking at you, the healers are looking at their Cassidy, and no one's shooting the ball, and your ball is getting so much more value. So it's not in the fact that you're healing the ball and keeping them up in the downtime, but rather you're helping in the uptime. Oh, okay, gotta hit the yeah, those are critical moments where you have to hit that sleep. But to be honest, I don't blame you for not hitting that sleep and not hitting that anti. That was kind of a hard one. And then I'm assuming that there's really nothing more that you can do here. Okay, so I'm gonna actually give you your GM3. I think that you can handle the mental of a little more strenuous tasks, like 3 things to improve going forward. So 1, I want you to take more risks in limit test. This is gonna be like a really high level like risks. I want you to take more risks in your positioning, in your limit testing, and in your abilities. Because now that you've seen it, there's no excuse that there's no excuse not to take these risks. Because you, in that one fight where you antied the Cassidy, you see the light. You see how your offensive plays can effectively enable your team rather than you just healing your team. And so there's an entire whole section of Ana that you're missing, enabling your team through offensive plays versus just healing them. So take more risks. Address the threats while you're taking those risks, so you're not just inting and running it down and saying, oh, Coach Oyama told me to take more risk, and then running into like a full 6-man of dive. Take more risks and address the team compositions while you're taking those risks to make them smart. But still, I want you to take those risks. So 2, I think, focus on your Myco and calm down. You need to hit these precious sleeps and these precious anti-nades, especially. With your aiming, it's not as important, even though it's still important. But I would say instead of aim train, use the aim trainer to train your mind. Because it's not that your aim is bad. I see you hitting shots consistently. I see you have the I can just smell it out that you have the ability to have the micro to be able to aim, to be able to adjust your attention very fast, switch like spray transfer if you're like a CS player. But calm yourself. Do whatever it takes. Some different methods, go in an aim trainer before you start playing, so you're already adjusted to the environment. Maybe like meditate before you play. In between rounds, breathe while you're reloading. Breathe in between your shots. Breathe. Think about the next team fight and what could happen, so then you're calm when it happens and that you don't miss these antis. And I guess also playing more and seeing the different possibilities so nothing is new to you will help with your calmness. It's a really bad font to do this with, but it's also a really bad font to do this with. They're all bad. And then number 3, I would say maybe I'm going to mix it in with number 1, because there's so much more. I think the biggest thing here is that you need to play more aggressive and use Ana's kit more towards the utility side. So, yeah, I'm going to break this down. Instead of taking more risks, this is going to be positioning. Because you cannot get your abilities to have the same offensive impact without this prerequisite of positioning. And so if you're not on the high ground, pushed up, ready to anti someone, your anti will never be as easy And if you're trying to stretch it and throw this hard ante, you're not going to get it most of the time. And so you need that positioning to be able to be in that position to give you the opportunity to play offensively and gain utility from doing that. So positioning and then CDs, offensive CDs, offensive. Make sure that you use your cooldowns in an offensive manner when the time is right to be able to provide value, because I'm sure that you're seeing those moments where there's like nothing that you can do. You're just watching your Cassidy get one shot, and it's in that moment when you feel helpless, in which you can readjust your thinking and ask yourself, okay, obviously my because sometimes your DPS will just solo carry and you just gotta pocket them. But if, especially in comp, one strategy that I like to say is find the weakest player on the enemy team and abuse them. Find the strongest player on your team and enable them. No matter what role you're on, if you're on tank, if it's your DPS, you enable them. If it's your healers, you play for your healers and you play for their cooldowns. If you're a healer, you play for your DPS if they're the strongest. Obviously, they might be the strongest, but they're losing against the enemy DPS right now. So it could be pocket your tank, but rather you know that your DPS aren't going to be winning if you're just healing them, so don't be insane and do the same thing and expect better results. Let's adapt your playstyle and be a more adaptable and ready player to be able to ante the enemy tank, especially since they don't have a Kiri. Sleep the enemy Baptiste, and it'll force the Mercy to get off that Ashe, and then your DPS will win that fight. Sleep the enemy Tracer, and you get a free kill. So it's a world of possibilities when it comes to offensive cooldowns, and I think it's just the fact that you need to tap into it and start, and it's going to feel like terrible feeding at first, but once you're able to manage balance out the feeding versus utility, it'll feel so much better, and you won't have these moments of, oh, what could I have done, because it's nothing. You couldn't have done anything to help them. What you could have done is provided utility elsewhere. And so yeah, that's pretty much